Somewhere in the region of northern Arabia, in a valley named Jaffa, two armies came face to face with a determination to fight until their last breath. Leading one side was Khalid bin Walid, the commander of the Muslims. On the other side, the army was led by an apostate leader named Salma. She was stationed on top of a camel guarded by hundreds of elite fighters to protect her. Soon the Muslims led the charge and the two armies engaged in brutal bloodshed in October of 632. The flame of Ridda war was still burning intensely in Arabia. Once the Battle of Buzaka was over, Khalid sent out several troops of Muslims to nearby tribes and offered them to rejoin Islam. Many of them accepted the offer peacefully. With the rest of the troops, Khalid followed Rayna, who was the main commander of Tulaiha's army and a powerful tribal chief. After chasing Rayna and his troops for almost 90 kilometers, Khalid overtook them at a place named Gamra. Rayna and his soldiers refused to surrender and attacked the Muslims. So another round of fighting transpired. The encounter was intense but short. A few more apostates fell on the ground and others started to flee again. But the leader Rayna was taken as a prisoner and he was sent to Medina. There he pleaded for mercy and Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu pardoned him with the condition that he would never apostate again. After the encounter, Khalid led the Muslim troops to Nakra. It was the territory of a tribe named Bani Sulaim. Fighters from this tribe actually fought under Khalid's command during the conquest of Mecca and the Battle of Hunain. But unfortunately, they apostatized after the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once the Muslims reached Nakra, they launched an attack on Bani Sulaim without any delay. Fighters from Bani Sulaim resisted fiercely and several Muslims were killed. But after a few hours of violent encounter, the Bani Sulaim tribe was overwhelmed by the intensity of the Muslim attack. Some of them surrendered and some of them fled the battlefield. Their leader was captured and sent to Medina as well. And just like Rayna, the leader of Bani Sulaim was granted a pardon by Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu with the promise that Bani Sulaim would never stand against Islam in the future. Moving on, Khalid and the Muslims under his command returned to Buzaka. Delegations from many local tribes came to Khalid at Buzaka and offered to give up apostasy and rejoin Islam. Khalid accepted their offer with the condition that the tribes need to give up their members to Khalid, who murdered innocent Muslims. These murderers were then put on trial and punished according to the seriousness of their crimes. After 3 weeks of camping in Buzaka, Khalid then led the Muslim army to the place called Jafar. In Jafar, an apostate army was gathered under the command of Salma, as we have seen at the beginning of the video. Salma was the chief of a sub-tribe of Ghatafan. It wasn't very common during that time for a woman to become the leader of a tribe, but Salma achieved that role because of her leadership and aggression towards the enemy. However, she used her power to gather the enemies of Islam at Jafar, so Khalid had to neutralize the threat. Within a few days, the Muslims reached Jaffa, where the enemy was already prepared to fight against them. Khalid ordered the Muslim army to initiate a general charge. The Muslims clashed against the enemy defense like a wave in the stormy sea. But Salma's fighters were experienced and battle-hardened, so they did not collapse before the ferocious Muslim attack. The encounter continued on for hours, but when it looked like the battle was moving towards a stalemate, the Muslims could eventually push the wings of the apostate army But the center, under the command of Salma herself, stood still. Salma was leading the army on top of an armored camel, and she was surrounded by the bravest and the best of her fighters. It proved to be a daunting challenge for the Muslims to overpower Salma's defense line. Khalid realized that he needed to come up with a different strategy to shift the flow of the battle. Otherwise, the Muslims would need to endure a ton of casualties to win the battle. So Khalid took some of the best fighters under his command, and together they bolted their horses right to the center of the enemy where Salma was located. Several members of the groups attacked Salma's guards and engaged in a vicious sword fighting. Khalid and a few other fighters of the group used this opportunity to pierce through the enemy defense. They approached Salma's camel with lightning speed and attacked the camel. With some fierce slashes of the sword, the camel was brought down, and Salma fell from the top of the camel and died instantaneously. Before the enemy could even realize what was happening, their leader was gone. They lost their fighting spirit, and the Muslims could now easily overpower the apostates. The apostates took a huge casualty. The ones who survived either escaped or surrendered. The Muslims won a decisive victory against another big threat to their existence under the leadership of the Sword of Allah, Khalid ibn al-Walid.